Have you ever noticed that some years arrive like ordinary calendar changes, while other years feel as if history has already started leaning forward before they even begin, as though the pressure in politics, market, society, and leadership has been building quietly and is now waiting for the first real spark to show everyone how unstable things already were? And let me ask you something more direct. If the last firehorse year, 1966, coincided with one of the most politically overheated and socially explosive periods of the 20th century, do you really think it is wise to treat 2026 as just another colorful zodiac label when the world is already full of conflict, polarization, and overextended systems? And if 2026 brings the return of the firehorse in a world that is already running too hot, too fast, and too emotionally charged, are we prepared to read that as a warning about acceleration, or are we still going to comfort ourselves with the fantasy that modern societies are too sophisticated to repeat old mistakes in new forms? Stay with me until the end of this video for three reasons. First, I'm going to show you why the 60-year firehorse cycle deserves to be taken seriously as a pattern of timing rather than dismissed as decorative superstition. Second, I'm going to explain why 1966 matters, not because history copies itself neatly, but because it shows what happens when ideological heat, social fracture, and forceful leadership all rise together. And third, I'm going to show you why 2026 should be read as a warning year, not because doom is guaranteed, but because acceleration under unstable conditions is exactly how ordinary tension becomes extraordinary damage. And if conversations like this help you think more clearly about timing, cycles, and the deeper forces moving underneath public events, click like, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with other people who need something stronger than recycle headlines and softer than panic. Now let's reset the frame properly. The fire horse is not just one more animal sign for people to play with online. It sits inside the Chinese sexagenary cycle, where 12 branches and 10 heavenly stems rotate through a 60-year pattern. And that matters because 2026 returns to Bingwu Yang Fire over Horse, the same stem branch combination seen in 1966. In practical terms, that means a double fire structure of visibility, intensity, speed, ego, momentum, and consequence. A metaphysical reading that is exactly the kind of combination that acts less like a gentle seasonal adjustment and more like an accelerant poured onto an environment that is already carrying stress. That is why I would not describe 2026 as a prediction of disaster. That language is lazy. I would describe it as a warning about tempo. Fire does not invent every problem from nothing. Fire speeds things up, exposes what is weak, amplifies what is emotional, and reduces the amount of time people have to hide behind delay, procedure, or polite denial. If institutions are strong, disciplined, and honest, that can produce breakthrough. If societies are already divided, leaders are already grandiose, and systems are already under strain, then the same energy produces rupture faster. This is where 1966 becomes useful. 1966 was not just noisy, it was structurally overheated. In China, the Cultural Revolution began in May 1966 under Mao Zedong and opened the door to a decade of purges, ideological violence, and mass political chaos. At the same time, the wider world was already under Cold War strain, with Vietnam escalating, protest movements intensifying, and social authority being challenged across multiple societies. In Japan, fear surrounding the firehorse superstition was strong enough that births in 1966 fell sharply, by some estimates between 20 to 25% from the previous year. That is not proof of metaphysics. It is proof that cyclical belief can affect real demographic behavior when the cultural mood is strong enough. And that is the first reason 2026 matters. Not because the exact same events will happen again, but because 1966 shows you what a firehorse pattern looks like when a system is already under pressure. It looks like speed without emotional restraint. It looks like leaders who prefer agitation to stability. It looks like ideological certainty becoming more dangerous because the environment is too hot for caution to sound persuasive. It looks like institutions struggling to absorb too many simultaneous shocks at once. Now look honestly at the present. We already live in a world where trust in institutions is weaker than it used to be, political tribes are harsher, social media rewards emotional extremity, and geopolitics is becoming more openly confrontational. Europe is still dealing with war pressure and security strain. The Middle East remains combustible. US-China rivalry is structural, not temporary. Public discourse in many countries is now driven less by persuasion than by outrage management. None of that requires metaphysics to notice. But once you place that already overheated global environment inside a firehorse year, the warning becomes harder to ignore. Because what the year changes is not the existence of tension, but the speed and visibility of its consequences. That is why I would call 2026 a warning for the world. Not because it contains one magical catastrophe waiting to happen, but because it increases the risk that unstable leaders, brittle institutions, and emotionally exhausted societies start reacting faster than they are thinking. A firehorse year favors movement, but it does not guarantee wisdom, and that combination is exactly what makes it dangerous. People start confusing action with clarity. Governments start mistaking force for control. Public start treating anger as authenticity. And once those habits become normalized in a high heat cycle, the price of miscalculation rises. This is also why the convergence with other cyclical systems gets people's attention, even if you do not accept every symbolic framework literally. In numerology, 2026 reduces to a universal year 1, 2, plus 0 plus 2 plus 6 equals sine 10. 1 plus 0 equals 1, which is traditionally read as the start of a new 9-year cycle and therefore associated with initiation, disruption, and fresh structures. Whether you believe that in a mystical sense is almost secondary. Symbolically, it fits the same larger pattern. Endings are behind us, pressure is building, and the next phase does not arrive quietly. And the same goes for broader astrological or cycle-based interpretations that point to a more impulsive, more combustible period in the mid-2020s. I am not interested in pretending every such system must be right in a literal predictive sense. That would be dishonest. What matters is the convergence of pattern where multiple frameworks, historical, political, symbolic, and cyclical, all start pointing toward the same underlying qualities of acceleration, conflict, visibility, and structural testing. It becomes foolish to dismiss the whole thing as coincidence and just as foolish to treat it as guaranteed prophecy. Now, if this is helping you see the year more clearly, click like, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with someone who still thinks timing is just decoration and history only matters after the damage is done. So what do we do with a year like this? We stop pretending that the warning is there to scare us and start using it to prepare. The point of reading 2026 properly is not to act like the world is doomed. The point is to understand that years of high fire expose bad leadership, fragile systems, weak emotional discipline, and fake certainty very quickly. They also reward courage, decisive reform, cleaner positioning, and authentic movement when those things are real. Fire is not moral. It does not care whether it is burning away lies or burning down fools. It simply reveals what can survive the heat and what cannot. That means the opportunity inside the warning is still real. At a personal level, it means resisting emotional overreaction, staying grounded, and refusing to let speed drag you into stupidity. At a societal level, it means refusing to reward political theater that confuses destruction with renewal. At a leadership level, it means knowing that in a year like this, the loudest voice is not automatically the strongest one, and the most dramatic move is not automatically the smartest. Let me put that more brutally. A firehorse year does not care about your branding. It cares whether your structure is real. A firehorse year does not care about your ideology. It cares whether your system can absorb pressure. A firehorse year does not care whether leaders feel important. It cares whether they can handle consequence without setting everything else on fire first. That is the warning. And that is why 2026 matters. If this gave you a sharper and more truthful way to think about the year ahead, click like, subscribe to this channel, and share it with other people who want something more useful than panic and more honest than denial.